What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 1 of the Jester Princecast with your host, aka Evan Simon. I screwed up the intro, I didn't write it down. But Evan Simon, and a guest that I think is some interesting, cool person I want to talk to, discuss for however they want to have me. And today, I'm very excited because my very first episode, and I want to thank my guest so much because I thought that no one was ever going to want to help me out with this. And I feel kind of upset because she's actually a podcaster herself, and I can tell, first time's not going to be the best for me, but hopefully she will help me be better. So introducing Celia Rose. Yay!
Hello, everybody.
Did I pronounce your name right?
Yes, that's right.
Yes, okay, because I think, it's Cecilia?
Yes.
Or is it? Yes. Okay, because on Facebook it is Cecilia. So you just change that for some reason?
Yeah, so when I was in school, none of my teachers could actually spell my name right, even though it's not, at least in my opinion, I don't think it's that hard. So I just took a couple letters out and suddenly everyone could spell my name. So yeah, that's all it is.
I always pronounced it Celia for some reason, but I can't spell. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I've actually been off work for probably about 40 minutes. So this is my first time to just kind of deflate and relax.
Yeah.
For the first time today. So
thank you so much for joining me. I'm gonna have a fun time talking to you. So
yeah,
I'm gonna tell you what, Celia. I was gonna intro with a very embarrassing story about how I messed up, but I figured I probably shouldn't. So instead, I'm gonna intro. I'm talking about something that I'm super excited about and waited years for. A little game, you might have heard of it, Persona 5. Now, what do you know anything about the Shin Megami Tensei or the Persona series beforehand, or are you familiar with those games?
Yeah, a little bit. I've played Persona 3 Portable, but that's about it.
Okay. See, that's a pretty good start. I won't go too deep into it because I do want to get to you, and you're all the meat that I want to get to. But since, I figured I won't be able to start. Let me back up. So the thing I want to do with this podcast is in the summer, hopefully around June or July, I want to start my own YouTube video, YouTube channel, I should say. And I'm going to be reviewing video games, talking about anime, movies, nerd stuff that I care about. But because I have to get a few stuff in order, I still need some editing software and other stuff like that. Talking to an artist today actually about getting some designs done, which is exciting. And I won't be able to do that until probably, like I said, June or July. And so I wanted to kind of what I call a soft opening, like how a restaurant has a soft opening. I want to do a soft opening, which is this podcast. When I want to talk to somebody, I want to just learn more about them. And like I said, you are somebody who I've always been kind of really interested in because you really are good at cosplay, and you really are passionate at Macross, which we'll get to. And I always wanted to talk to you, but I never got a chance to do a one-on-one with you ever. So I'm super excited about that. So I just wanted to let you guys know, next week, I hope I'm going to be better. Like I said, I'm probably not going to be the best host right now, but practice makes perfect, so just bear with me. Next week, I got a host, which is going to be super interesting and probably super different than what today's episode is going to be. So I'm excited about that. But back to what I was saying earlier, is that eventually I do want to talk about Persona 5, in depth. But right now, I just want to lay off of it, is the game is really great. It is fantastic. It took so many years, and it's a running joke that it was coming 2013 and 2014 and so on and so forth. And now we finally get it, and the game is just absolutely incredible. I mean, if you don't know anything about Persona beforehand, it's basically half high score simulator, half dungeon crawling RPG, where you and your friends, by night, are the Phantom Thieves. You go around to an alternate world called these palaces, where you go fight shadows and try to steal someone's heart. There's a corrupted adult that you want to go to, and you want to basically make them have a change of heart. So you go into, it's kind of very Inception-y, I guess, in that term, Persona 5 is. Because, in that movie, they have, they go into the dream to implant the idea. I can't pronounce that word. So it's very similar. And so this game is very similar to that. They have to go into the palace, they have a treasure because of thieves, right? So they have to steal the treasure, and that will make the evil adult because there's different adults throughout the game who are corrupted. So they go into that different palace to try to steal the treasure to make them have a change of heart. And let me tell you something, Celia Rose. Like, Persona's relatively a dark series, and I don't think a lot of people see that when they never play those games before, because they see, oh, it's flashy anime characters, and it's like really well done anime artwork, which is done by Production IG in this game, and the anime cutscenes all throughout the game are incredible. So like, oh, it's a fun game. No, this game is just messed up. Like, it won't spoil anything, but the very first like adult you get into is this gym teacher, and like the stuff he's doing is just some messed up stuff, and the game takes in like a super dark direction. But it's really good. It's one of those only games that when you say half of that, like I said, is the dungeon crawling aspect. The other half is kind of the high school simulator where you hang out with your friends. You have a shoes who you can hang out with. You can get like part-time jobs. You can study. You can go out towns. You do tests. And that sounds all really boring, but somehow, some way, they make taking tests really fun and challenging. So, yeah, I won't get to that because eventually, hopefully, I'll get some other guys who like play the game and want to beat it. And I want to do a spoiler cast there and kind of talk about it. And hopefully, I'll be, more proficient in the arts. But that getting out of the way, like I said, Celia Rose. So I'm going to look at my first question I sent you. And I just want to know, like, why, like, how long have you loved anime? And, like, is there any shows you're watching now that you're enjoying? And
let's see. I started with anime 14 years ago. I was 11 years old, and I found Sailor Moon at the video rental store.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because, like, I have memories of watching Sailor Moon as a very young child, like, probably, like, 4 or 5 in preschool. And I always thought that I just like made those memories up because your brain does that sometimes. Sometimes you fabricate memories, and I actually ran into, it was just happened to run into my old preschool teacher a couple weeks ago. And, and she's like, do you remember me? And I'm like, well, I guess I kind of do. Like, I remember the building that we were in. And she's like, yeah, with the, and she described the inside. And I was like, oh, I didn't make that up. I actually experienced that. So I had exposure to anime when I was really, really young. Found it again when I was in 6th grade. And at the time I was a pretty active artist. So I was drawing a lot more than I am now. And I really just wanted to learn how to draw anime and manga. And that's really what got me started in it. And now I've been in it for the long haul for 14 years this year. A lot of people told me that it would be a phase when I was in 7th grade. They're like, oh, you'll get over it. And here I am, almost 15 years later, still doing it, talking to people about it, podcasting about it. I've met people, in Japan because I love anime. So it's taken me places I never thought it would.
Oh, that's really cool. One thing, I'm kind of jumping around. I sent her a list of like topics. I realize right now it's kind of out of order, so I'm jumping. So I apologize.
Oh, no problem.
There was one particular anime that I think you probably hold in high regard more than any other stuff. And I didn't know this when I asked you to join me. I didn't learn it after. But you're actually on a podcast talking about this anime. Is that correct?
A little bit, yeah. I was on a YouTube show last year reviewing Macross Delta.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm currently on with the same crew on another show called Information High, where we talk about Macross stuff, but also some other pop culture stuff in general. And I'm currently in the planning stages of a Macross project for iTunes with another friend of mine. I don't know how much I can talk about it yet because he hasn't said anything about it online, but once it's available, then I'll be sure to post it places.
Okay, so what about the other stuff? If people are interested to learn about the other stuff, where they could find those or find that?
Information High and the Macross Delta Recap Show are on YouTube under our channel Macross Fan Central.
All right. So now, here's what I've done. Okay, so I know virtually nothing about Macross. Has I put Macross?
Either one. I kind of flop between the two. It's Macross. So in English, you either get Macross or Macross.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Macross because I have a speech impediment.
All right.
But so what I wanted to do, okay, is I looked up briefly what it was, and of course, looking at your posts, I got it. So what I want to do real quick, take maybe like 5 minutes, and I want to explain the Macross series for someone who has never seen Macross. I think that'd be really fun. Okay. So I want to start the scene, and you can tell me like how off I am. All right. So I want to set the scene for you, Cecilia.
All right.
So the year is 2014. The place, Tokyo. Now you open up with this shot of like these waters and rivers that have like blood in it. Like all these buildings are just destroyed and rampaged. And you have like maybe like there's a shot of like a highway and there's all these tanks from the UN there. And they all look like they're all old and damaged. And then you have a shot of our main character, who I'm sure you know is Nico from Love Live, right? So Nico comes up and like she looks at her cell phone and she realizes, oh, she was supposed to go find someone today, right? So she goes up to a payphone and asks it. It's not working. Signal isn't working. She doesn't know what's going on. These sirens stop blaring and she's freaking out. He's like, what is the Nico going on, right? And she sees this giant monstrosity come up, like this humongous, like, I guess, kaiju, whatever you call those things, like this giant, like, humongous monster coming. She's freaking out. She doesn't know what to do. And then before she knows it, like this fancy sports car just speeds up right in front of it, right? It opens the door, and of course, it's Katori, also from Love Life News. And she's like, Nico, we got to go right now. And he's like, what's going on? And he's like, I'll explain to you later. We need a Nico go. So they get in the car, right? And Katori takes Nico to this like base thing, right? And so they go down to this elevator to this giant base. He's like, what are we doing? And like Katori's like, we're going to meet your mother, Nico. And she's like, okay, I haven't seen my mother in years. Like, it's okay, we're going to go meet her. And so she comes in and she opens up to this like humongous like platform, right? And it's completely dark. Lights come on and she's this giant, like humongous mech right in front of it, right? And it's like, what's going on right here? And then she sees her mom, which of course is going to be, I don't know, Maki, okay? Maki? Yeah, Maki from Love Live, of course, is her mom. And she's like, Nico, we need you to pilot the Ava. And it's like, wait, what? I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do that. And it's like, no, you need to go. And he's like, she says, no. He's like, you need to do it. It's like, Nico, no. It's like, Nico, you will. It's like, I won't. She's like, okay, fine. We're going to bring out the first child. And off through it on the cellar is, of course, the awful popular character Nozomi, who's just like effed up. She has bandages everywhere. She has like blood gushing down. Like she looks like she's about to be dead. And then Maki's like, Nozomi, you're going to pilot the Ava. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. Well, she says yes, is what she says. She says yes. And Nico's like, no, fine, I'm going to do it. Okay, so Nico comes up in the Ava, pilots it, about to go fight the Angel. And what you know is that the Angel is what the giant monster is called, but it's also Yohane from Love Live Sunshine, from the band Aquas. Okay? And so they're fighting. She doesn't know what's going on. And so Nico gets really angry, and she says, you know what, Yohane? I'm going to beat you. And she says, this right hand of mine burns with an intense passion, and I'm going to defeat you. So take all my love, all my anger, all my sorrow, and Nico finger. And then like he like crushes Yohane's skull, and Yohane dies. And then like an amazing like pop song happens. And that is Evan Simon's depiction of what Macross is. So how far was I?
I don't think I would have ever thought to put Love Live in Evangelion. That was good. It's not quite the Macross that I've been watching, but you know, it could be a future Macross. You know, we've had 35 years of this stuff. Time for some fresh story ideas.
Spike, get in the Ava.
Oh my goodness.
But seriously though, okay, so one thing, and I want you to explain it for me, but the only thing I really know about it, can you hear me? My computer. Sorry, I'm computer faded. The only thing I know about is it was the second series of Robotech, which I'm not gonna. You can probably explain what Robotech is, but it's pretty much what I assume like old anime that was like adapted into the West, but it was 3 different mech series that all got edited into like one series, something like that. And the second one, it was an adaptation of the first Macross. And that's really all I know about. So why don't you explain to me like what Macross is and why you fell in love with it and what about it you really enjoy and all that good stuff.
Okay, yeah. So Macross as a whole, just the franchise as a whole, is a space opera. There are variable fighter jets. They're called the Valkyries, and they're probably the most iconic part of Macross. And one of the key elements to Macross is that music and culture can change the tide of events. With the very first Macross that was made in 1982, basically what happened was that the Earth had been destroyed during World Wars, and they had happened upon this alien ship that crash landed, and so they took the tech and re-outfitted it to create the super dimensional fortress Macross 1. So there are going to be more of these things over the years, and their intent is to use it in order to go out and find other places to colonize so that they can continue to keep living because they're running out of resources on Earth. And they accidentally start a conflict with the alien race that owned the tech originally before they took it, and they have to find a way to either defeat them or come to peace with them without starting another war, especially because these aliens are 30-foot giants. So there's some differences between the two of them that they learn aren't so different after all, and those themes carry on to future Macross series. I think there's 4 or 5 different TV shows, and each of them has their own story, and they don't necessarily carry the story of one into the next one. They're all standalones.
That sounds very kind of sort of like Gatchaman Crowds, a little bit. Maybe I'm just crazy. I've never seen either, so.
Yeah, I haven't seen Gatchaman Crowds either.
Oh yeah. We'll get Megan on one day and we can talk about that.
Yeah, we'll get Megan.
That's really interesting. So what about it so much that you connect with? Because you're always posting Macross stuff. I think you cosplay so much. So what is exactly that really speaks to you personally?
So my favorite Macross installment is Macross Frontier. And that's the 25th anniversary celebration of the Macross franchise. And what really resonated with it for me is I really like the characters and I really like the music. So the characters in Frontier are my favorite. Cheryl Nome is one of the protagonists, and she's a pop idol singer. And she's a total badass, and she looks beautiful while she's doing it. And then the music in Macross Frontier is composed and written by Yoko Kanno.
Ooh,
yeah, it's very good. And she actually did the music for Macross Plus in 1994 also. And the score is just so good. And the writing, like, really compared to other Macross series, the writing for the series is for Frontier is about the same. But there's just something about the chemistry of the cast with the vocalists that they chose, plus the music and the direction from Yoshiyuki Tomino and Shoji Kawamori coming in, that just made it really stand out for me.
Yeah.
And so it's my favorite. A lot of older Macross fans would probably laugh because that's really like the quote unquote newbie entrance point is Frontier. And a lot of people just start with Frontier and then don't go back. But I actually went back and have watched most of the old stuff. There's just something about it that I can't really explain. Like, when you get that feeling that you're like, yes, this is it. And no matter how many times you experience it, it's still just as exciting and still just as fun. That's the feeling that I get with Frontier.
Now, like, if you know me, my favorite anime is Monogatari.
Yes.
And that's how I was when I watched. Like, I remember, and I'm probably making Monogatari episode 2, don't worry. But what I remember doing is starting the first episode on Crunchyroll and watched maybe, like, I want to say 30 seconds of it, and I paused it, and I told myself, this is my favorite anime of all time. And, like, that might change after the next episodes. It might go, but for right now, it's my favorite anime of all time. And, I don't want to go up into Monogatari right now, but with every series, it kind of just, like, reaffirmed that for me. So you think you might have, like, a similar story with, Macross and... whatnot.
Yeah, I think so. I really like musicals, and this is a musical anime, but what's nice about it is you don't have forced musical numbers. There's something that Macross writers have, and the directors have always done really well, and that's matching the music and the action sequences really,
It's
really well.
hard to do, I would imagine.
It is. It's very hard. But like an example in from Macross Delta, because that's the freshest in my memory. There's a point where they're using the pinpoint barrier system on the Macross Elysian, and what that is, it's just a shield that they activate that moves. At least it moved around in the old one. I don't remember if it moves around in this one, but they're activating it, and as they're activating it, it's in beat with a line of percussion in one of the songs that the pop idols are singing at that time, and it's right on cue, and it just is so effective with how they are able to pair those things that it doesn't feel too cheesy. Like, it's definitely cheesy. You can't have pop stars in outer space battles without being cheesy, but it gets just the right amount of it that it doesn't feel like it's going over the top. And Macross has really pushed that envelope, especially with Macross 7, because that was hella 90s and super cheesy with space battles. But yeah, they get it right. Another thing about Macross that's really special to me is because I don't feel like it's been treated very fairly in the United States.
Oh yeah, I wanted to ask you about this Harmony Gold and whatnot.
Yeah, they Harmony Gold bought the licensing rights, and I'm probably gonna get some details wrong because I don't remember it exactly. They bought the licensing rights from a company that didn't actually own all of the rights to the original Macross, so that they could form Robotech with two other series, Southern Cross and Mospeda. And at the time, in the 80s...
Right, sorry.
What?
Those series have nothing to do with each other?
Yeah, they're all completely unrelated. They look kind of similar, but they're not connected.
And were they different animation studios also?
I think so. I think they were.
Okay. So go ahead. So I just want to clarify that.
Yeah. So at the time, that was a really common thing for anime to be brought over and for it to be chopped and screwed and changed around so that it was more marketable for American kids. When these are things that aren't really for kids, you know?
Or kids treatment.
Yeah. And Harmony Gold did that, and a lot of companies did that. But what bothers me about Harmony Gold is even after 35 years, they're still pushing their Robotech narrative. Like, they're trying really hard to put out new Robotech content and failing. They've been trying to do a lot of stuff. Like, they tried to get a live action movie, which is why they're signed with Sony. They tried to kickstart a video game for Robotech. They had Robotech Shadow Chronicles, which I've been told has terrible, terrible animation because they tried to actually do an original animation project. But they won't give credit to the original creators of Macross for using Macross in Robotech. And that's where my issue is.
And so who's the studio, the original studio of Macross?
It was originally created by Shoji Kawamori when he was with Studio Nue, but Studio Nue is gone, and he's now with Satellite.
That stuff is crazy, especially with, like, you know, the Western, like how anime was in the 90s was so different. And I think like anime fans nowadays, especially we have like stuff like Crunchyroll, which is like directly from the horse's mouth almost, you know, and like the great things Funimation is doing, and you know, like everyone gives them crap, but I love Aniplex because they have all this stuff everywhere, right? And that's really hard because, you know, nowadays that's kind of common, but back in the 90s, like especially with, I know it's kind of different, but like the 4Kids stuff like that, like they would try to butcher stuff for American audiences. And one thing I hate, I think more than anything else, is like censorship, you know? And so, yeah, that kind of always like bugs me. So do you think that that's ever going to be resolved? Or do you think it's just they're going to always have all the rights and we're never going to have like a proper person license it in the West?
I think until Harmony Gold decides that it's not going to make them any money anymore, they're going to continue to hold on to the rights for Macross. There have been Harmony Gold staff and Harmony Gold supporters that have gone out of their way to harass pretty well-known Macross fans and Macross staff on social media, including the mechanical designer for Macross Delta. I'm like, why would you do this?
Why would you get mad about that? Oh, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. So I I don't think so, but Studio Satellite and Kawamori are finding a way around it. A couple of my friends, Gwen, Mike, and Adrian, all work on the official English subtitles for Macross Delta. So all of the Japanese Blu-rays have officially translated English subtitles that have been put there and worked on by Macross fans. So there's a lot of love that's going into that. So that is one way that they're getting around the blockade that Harmony Gold has set up.
You know, one thing is what people are doing now, like in the video game industry. And for example, there's a game coming out called Yooka-Laylee. Have you heard about it?
No.
So Yooka-Laylee, ever heard of the game Banjo-Kazooie? From like the 90s, yeah. And I can't pronounce it. I'm going to try, but I have a big speech impediment. Banjo-Kazooie by Rare. I can't pronounce my R's. But anyway, basically what happened is that the people who worked on Banjo-Kazooie, I don't know all the details, but I'm assuming the people who worked on Banjo-Kazooie, like in whenever that game came out, like 2000s, I'm assuming, they all left. And eventually they formed their own studio. And so they're making another game called Yooka-Laylee, which is pretty much Banjo-Kazooie, but of course they renamed all the different characters, but it's the same sort of game, the same sort of flavors, just with a different skin on it. So you think maybe that's the thing that might need to happen? The people of Macross might have to, well, it's not Macross, it's Crossmas. Do you maybe get that and like license something else?
I don't know if they would do that though, because Macross is really one of Shoji Kawamori's creations, and he's been working on it since it started. Like, one of the things that he does, and it's really cool, is when he designs the new Valkyrie fighter, is he builds it in Legos first.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's fully transformable when he builds it in Legos. And that's how he demonstrates, you know, this is what the fighter mode looks like. This is Batroid, this is Garwalk, this is what this piece does. So I don't see him doing that anytime soon. But in the past couple of years, he's actually made commentary about Harmony Gold squatting on his IP internationally, and he's been silent for everything up until about 2015, when he finally said, he's like, please just give us credit. He's like, if you want to work with us, that's great. We will work with you. But you have, because they're not. Like, if you watch the credits for Robotech that's streaming up on Crackle right now, it says it's created by Carl Masek, but there's no credit that says original work by Shoji Kawamori, original character designs by Haruhiko Mikimoto. Like, there's none of that. None of the Japanese original staff are credited.
That's lame.
Yeah, it is lame. It's really dumb, especially in this current era. Like, I don't know why they're continuing to stick with a business model that really is 30 years outdated, when they could be doing what Funimation and Crunchyroll are doing and really making a lot more money. They could be working with Satellite. You know, there's so many things that I'm like, why are you stuck in the 80s? But there's not a lot that we can do except put our money where our mouth is. You know, don't buy Harmony Gold, buy stuff, you know, overseas, and it sucks because you have to pay import prices, but
well, I know that
it demonstrates an international need to the original creators in Japan.
Yeah, that's really depressing. It must suck because, you know, my favorite anime is on Hulu, Crunchyroll. You can watch it for free, and I was like, oh, it's easy accessible. Besides the Kizun movies, which I did pre-order the second one, by the way, Suicide. And so I could imagine, like, well, my favorite anime would be like this humongous, irrational paywall by some jerks who don't even seem to care about the fans. You know, like Funimation, Crunchyroll, they care about the fans, right? And honestly, like I said, a lot of people give them crap, but Aniplex, I think, cares about the fans. And, you know, Sentai and all of them. And I don't, like, all the stuff you tell me doesn't sound like someone who cares about the fans. And that's how you make money, by caring about the fans. Like, that's what happens. Do right by them, and they do right by you. You know? Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, I mean, it sucks, especially when I do post about it in the IGN group, and there's the rule about not talking about illegally sourced anime. And when people are like, what's this show? I want to watch it. And I'm like, well, this is what it's called. Go Google searching, you know, like I can't actually say like, hey, you can't get this anywhere else. You know, I can't say that explicitly because it breaks group rules. So that is a challenge. That is a challenge that I've had when I'm posting about it. But that's one of the reasons I post about it so much, is to draw awareness to it. Because the more people that are talking about it, someone has to answer at some point, whether it's Satellite and Kawamori or Harmony Gold. So
Mm-hmm.
just keep the conversation going.
Just keep the conversation. So I want to change gears here because I know I don't want to like waste your time. So another thing I think you're most known for is like you're a very prolific cosplayer. And the one thing that really like impresses me, because I'll be honest, I'm not the cosplay guy, but I can appreciate, you know, good work when I see it. And you make these fantastic things. Your Facebook group, everyone wants to see, is Celia Rose Cosplay, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Celia Rose Cosplay. Check her out if you haven't already. She makes amazing things. You did amazing Yoko, which is really good. And what I want to talk about is that, like, what about cosplay? Like, when did your journey with that start?
I started in 2009. I actually had friends who were cosplayers, and I used to be their photographer.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to try it out, but I didn't really know where to start. So like my first, I guess, quote unquote cosplay was like when Hitalia was still really popular, and my friends were cosplaying as, I think, England and America, I want to say. I can't remember which countries they were. But I was like, well, I can be Hungary because Hungary has brown hair like I do, or at least I did. And, you know, I'm like, I've got long brown hair. I can be Hungary, but it's literally just me in my regular clothes. And I think I gave up probably halfway through that photo session, actually trying to be the character, and was like, all right, well, you know, forget this. And then Macross Frontier came around, and I loved Cheryl so much that I was like, yep, let's do this. And she actually ended up being the first character that I cosplayed in 2010 with a really terrible wig and like hardly any makeup, like no foundation, just eyeliner, mascara, like, you know, which is funny because I have a pretty extensive theater background. I used to do a lot of community theater, and when I was like, probably from when I was like 12 up until I graduated high school. So my makeup skills should have been better, but weren't. And it just kind of kept going from there. I really think that being into theater and enjoying dressing up anyways, really cosplay was the next logical step, especially because with my work schedule, I can't do a lot of theater anymore.
Oh, yeah. I used to be in theater when I was a young lad. And I imagine that would take a lot of time. So when you're designing, like, from your inception to, I guess, like, do you write like do you draw your cosplays in sketchbooks first before you work on them?
I try to. Sometimes I know exactly what I want to do, and I can visualize it in my head. Like, I'm still kind of a newbie at it, but a lot of times if I see a pattern that looks close enough to what I want, then I can make the adjustments in my head and then get the pattern and just go straight to work, which half the time is really stupid because I end up making a really big mistake and having to start over. But when it's a more complex costume, I do try to draw it out so I can isolate different parts so I don't get overwhelmed with the amount of work that I have to do, or like just the type of task. Like, sleeves are my worst. I hate sleeves. I hate sewing them. I hate trying to make them work. They're just the worst things ever. So usually I spend a lot of time on those. But yeah, I try to at least write a list, because that's another way to stay organized too.
So how do you, like, I guess from process of when you first decide I'm going to cosplay as this character to when that cosplay is done and you're wearing it at cons, like, how long is that? Like, what's the timetable?
Sometimes it depends. Let's see. The costume that I'm currently working on, I think I decided I was going to cosplay that one. Usually I decide I'm going to cosplay stuff probably about a year or so in advance. Like, usually I see it and I'm like, this is cool, and I add it to my Cos Planner app on my phone. Sometimes I get to work on it within a couple months. Sometimes, like my Luna cosplay from the Sailor Moon S movie, I talked about cosplaying it like 4 years ago. And then I finally got to cosplay it last year. So it really just depends on where my interest is and when I start it. Usually if I'm sewing it, it can take anywhere from probably 4 to 6 months of work.
Dang. I mean, that's actually quicker than I thought it would be, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I don't do armor builds or electric stuff, so it doesn't take quite as long. But I would like to try doing like armor. Like, armor cosplays are one of my like dream projects, but they're just so expensive.
You should have a 3D printer. That'd probably work.
Right.
So do you have like any other cosplays you gotta like look to? You know, whenever you're designing things, or Anything like that?
Yeah. One of my favorite cosplayers, like of all time, I love Jenny Hashimoto. Her username is Most Flogged. I love her stuff. She's really talented. She's been cosplaying for probably like 10, 15 years, something like that. And she produces stuff so fast, and she shows the like the process of how she does it on her social media. She makes costumes so fast and it looks so nice that like her level of work is kind of my bar where I'd like myself to be at. So she's my inspiration for efficiency and quality of costume. I also really, really like Amy Lynn. Her username is Miss Habit. I met her at Anime Expo in 2015, and she was super sweet, and her costumes are really cool. Like, I didn't know who she was when I met her. And then I saw her stuff, and she's really talented. And then one of my other favorite cosplayers is Linda Lay, Vampy Bit Me. I got to meet her at Anime Expo also, and she was so nice. Like, I went actually just with a friend because he wanted to get a print signed, and I ended up stuck in the signing line for like 20 minutes because they were waiting for the signature line to go down. And I was talking with Linda's manager, I guess, about a costume that I was working on for Ron Mahaff, and she overheard it and was chatting with me about Ron Mahaff for the 20 minutes that I was waiting.
Were you Girl Ranma? Was that who you were?
No, Shampoo.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
That is. That seemed like one episode. That's like really cool. So I think with anything, honestly, but especially cosplay, is that people who kind of want to get into it, they look at it and they say, I don't know how to sew, or I don't know what materials to use, and they kind of get, I guess, like discouraged to doing that. So for anyone who wants to start cosplay, or like looking into cosplay, like what advice would you want to give those people?
Decide how you want to start, because like now with cosplay being a lot more mainstream, there's so many different ways you can enter it. You can decide if you want to learn how to sew or how to craft, or you can decide that you just want to buy your costumes and have fun. Like if someone wants to learn how to sew, then great. I've got like a Pinterest board full of tutorials, and I'll probably bombard them with all those tutorials, like sending them all. Here, look at these and read. Read other people's build blogs. Like Johnny from Johnny and Junkers Cosplay has a blog where he puts up his build logs for all of his props that he makes, and he also does live streaming while he's working on them. If you're gonna buy it, I recommend starting with Taobao. Like, it seems really intimidating because it's a Chinese vendor, but everything is so much like Taobao.
Yeah.
It's like, it's really inexpensive.
Well, now, how do you spell it? Just so people know.
Taobao.
Okay, so I'll make sure people know, like, you know, the spelling of that if they want to check it out.
Yeah. So there's just depends on how you want to do it. But there's really no wrong way to start anymore. There's not the stigma that there used to be for buying costumes, which there was at the time that I started and my first costume was bought. So it was kind of challenging. But now you have people that do all handmade or a combination of bought and handmade or completely purchased. So if you want to go for it, just dive in. Be prepared though that some stuff might take a little more effort and might seem a little more frustrating, like makeup and wig styling. But just keep on persevering and take the time to do it, and you'll eventually get the outcome that you want.
So we've talked about cosplay as a whole, new interests of cosplay. I kind of want to take, and I told you I was going to do this, I want to take kind of like, not necessarily a right turn, but there was something that, you know, you told me about personally, and other female cosplayers have told me about, and I'm assuming that's why male cosplayers have to deal with this too, is that this notion of, you know, you come in, you're in a convention, you just want to have fun. And yeah, I apologize if I'm saying like the wrong term here, but your costume you're wearing, which you totally should have every right in the world to wear, not saying you shouldn't, might be you show some skin. And you have some jerk who comes over and wants to, like, you know, that's the call that it is, like, molest you. And that's wrong. And I'm always going to be the person who thinks that people who commit acts of sexual assault like this, like, in society, we do have this thing when we want to, like, make sure girls know, hey, you should protect yourself. But I do think we should tell guys, hey, like, you shouldn't do that to women or guys. You know, that isn't cool. You shouldn't do that. But at the same time, it's going to happen. So how do, people kind of protect yourself? You have any tips to like deal with, people at conventions, or any like groping or any other terms of harassment for people?
Yeah, speak up. Like if someone is making you feel uncomfortable, say something and don't be afraid to make a scene. Like that's actually one of the things that I regret about the times that I was harassed at conventions when I first started going, is I didn't say anything because I wasn't sure what I could say, and I was embarrassed. And I should have said something at those times. And looking back at it, I'm like, yeah, Celia, you really should have said something. Like you should have, punched this guy and reported him to security. But don't be afraid to tell somebody. And what's really important too is if somebody is bothering you, try your very best to get a look at their badge name or their badge number, because then you can report them to convention staff and they can actually try to find this person. Like a description helps, but having a name or a badge number makes it a lot easier to spot, because then that's something they can actually look for. Yeah, I usually don't go to cons by myself, so I usually have someone with me. I have found that when I went with my guy friends that I'm not bothered nearly as much as when I went with my girlfriends. But yeah, I think saying something, telling someone that what they're doing isn't cool is also important, because sometimes people don't know that what they're doing is wrong. Especially I've seen it with like women who kind of harass male cosplayers because they're dressed as their favorite character, and they're like, oh, look at you, you're such a hot Sebastian Michaelis, from Black Butler. Oh my God, Demon Butler, do me. That it makes them uncomfortable, and sometimes they don't realize that their joke is going too far.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So saying something is really important.
There's always that kind of stigma, and it's a terrible stigma about like everything. That's like, it's terrible to treat a girl that way, but it's perfectly okay to treat a guy like way because a guy likes it, and that's not true. Like I'm a guy and I've had girls grab my butt before, and it's uncomfortable. Like it's not something. Like, I don't know where that stigma gets. And there was something else I wanted to talk to you about. But I left my clothes. That was a very great, touching, dark subject. And it was really important, I think. And, oh, crap. I had my list, and now it's all over the place. That's what happens when I don't organize it. All right. So what we're going to do now is, now that you learned all about the stuff, we talked about your anime, Macross, we talked about cosplay, and there's something else that I learned about you, which totally unrelated to all of this, because not only are you like this amazing cosplayer who does, all these great things and goes to cons, like, is it true that you also, like, you're certified as a teacher for, like, special needs kindergartners? Is that true?
Yeah, close. I'm a preschool teacher at a developmental preschool with an inclusive classroom. So I have children who are typically developing, and I have children with diagnosed disabilities and undiagnosed in my classroom. And I am certified for a low level of behavioral therapy. It's in the state of Idaho. It's called habilitative supports. I don't know if it exists anywhere else outside the state of Idaho, but it's just a pretty low level of behavioral intervention therapy.
And so what do you do there, I guess? Like, as just like a regular teaching, I guess there's a certain type of curriculum or certain type of, I don't know, like rules to go by that's different than other classes?
What I do is I'm a caretaker. These kids are here because their parents are at work, and they can't be with their parents. So it's my job to love them and play with them and make sure that at the same time that I'm planning curriculum that provides natural opportunities in the classroom for them to learn skills and concepts. We don't do worksheets. Worksheets are so inappropriate, even up into elementary school. Like, you really shouldn't be giving kids worksheets until like third grade, like second or third grade. That's just not how kids learn. They really learn by playing and by experiencing things. So I spend probably about 2 hours every week, like setting up things intentionally so that my kiddo who, maybe can't isolate letters outside of the alphabet, like he can recite it, but he can't tell me if I just point to a letter out of order, what is this? So providing opportunities for him to have that in the classroom so that he gets more practice and builds that skill, facilitating social skills. So like, helping kids problem solve and helping them build meaningful friendships, because they're, you know, these are the kids that they spend most of their time with while their parents are at work. So, yeah, and making sure that they're cleaned and safe and fed until they go home at the end of the day.
Now, actually, when you were saying that, and that is really interesting, I was paying attention, I promise. And kudos for you to having that patience. Like again, I don't want to say anything that's gonna like upset anybody. I'm just gonna say that must take like a lot of patience and a lot of like caring and a lot of love on your part to be able to do that. Like someone like me, I could not do that at all. Like I don't know if I could, you know, handle that. So kudos for you. One thing I think I forgot about talking earlier, which I want to go back to that previous topic just because I think that is important, is so I'm, like I said, I'm not the convention dude. Okay, like, that's not my thing. But if one day I want to go to a convention, because there is a couple of like smaller cons in the area I live, and like as a guy myself, I'm not going to be the type of dude who goes up to a girl and gropes them. I would never harass them. And I think most guys aren't that type of person. But there is that level of awkwardness. Like, how do you approach someone who's, you know, dressed up in that certain way? Like, I love Tsubasa from Monogatari, right? So I see someone who has a really nice Tsubasa cosplay. She has like, you know, Tsubasa in one of her forms has like wears lingerie all the time, right? I'm like, man, I really like that character. I really like that cosplay. I want to take a picture of her, but there's kind of like an awkwardness to that. So could you, I guess for everyone also, like it shouldn't just be for males, but could you talk about maybe from that side of things, like tips of someone who might want to go to talk to someone, or should it just be, you know what, picture's not that important. You know, I don't want to bother this person and make them uncomfortable.
Okay. If they're busy doing something, ask them if they have time for a picture first. I will say it's a big don't to try to ask cosplayers for a picture while they're eating or while they're like trying to like take a drink or something. Like a lot of people do that, and it's been done to me. Like, please don't. Let me finish my sandwich in like 15 minutes. And then we can take pictures. But if they look like they're busy, like if they're in the vendor's hall and, you know, and they look like they're shopping, then just ask them like, hey, do you have time for a picture? And if they say yes, then great, let's take your picture. If they say no, give me a few minutes, then wait a few minutes. Usually they'll actually come back and be like, okay, I'm ready now. You know, my thing is people being in pictures with me. So it's cool if people want to take pictures with you because they love the character so much. You know, usually people, when they ask me for pictures, are like, hey, can I get a picture with you? I really like so-and-so. And I'm like, sure. The biggest thing is if you're going to be in the picture next to them and like you want to do a specific pose, always ask. Because some people aren't very comfortable with doing some things. Like I've had people of all genders who've asked me for a picture who try to put their arm around me without asking, and that actually makes me really uncomfortable, mostly just because I'm slightly germophobic. That just kind of comes with working with kids. They're all small, you know, petri dishes of infection, and I have to stay healthy. So I'm like, please don't touch me. I don't know where you've been. You know, I don't want to get your germs. So usually if they just ask, then I can say yes or no, and it really cuts the awkwardness for everybody. You know, because it's respecting that person because they're a stranger. You don't really know them. Yeah. But also everybody gets to enjoy the convention experience.
Yeah, communication is key. And so I don't want to take too much of your time, so I'm about to wrap things up. But there's a couple of things I wanted to get to real quick. Number one, what's with the sparkers? Everyone wants to know. People have been asking. When I told people, I said, oh yeah, I'm super excited about having you on my show. I'm trying to keep it over wraps just in case, you know, things didn't work out. But today I finally kind of let out of the bag, and someone was like, what's with the sparkers, Celia? So for that person, what's with the sparkers, Celia?
I love them. It's a filter on one of my favorite camera apps on my phone. It's called Beauty Cam. And I saw someone else posting pictures with that filter on social media a couple years ago, and I'm like, this is super cute. I have to have it. And it's like my favorite. There's another filter on there that's like petal blossoms floating around.
Oh yeah?
So that's cute. They're really cool. But yeah, that's why I just like them.
Right. That's right. Now, last thing before I let you go is that you are actually going to, and some people are going to get it, SakuraCon. I'm pronouncing Sakura because I watched the English dub of Naruto. You're going to that, and when is that? In Seattle, I believe, is where that is?
Yeah, that is next week, from April 14th to 16th.
And so, like, I think you put a meetup in the tub, so I apologize. I'm assuming that you're doing some sort of meetup there. If anyone interested to go talk to you or see you.
Yeah, I'm actually doing a couple meetups, which is a first for me. I've never hosted a meetup at a con before, so this will be interesting. On Friday at noon, the 14th, we're gonna have the IGN Anime Club member meetup, where we just meet up and then go get some lunch. And then on Saturday at 2 o'clock, I'm hosting the Macross gathering, which is, and to my knowledge, is the first Macross gathering at SoccerCon since 2011, which is the last time I went to one. So we'll see how it goes.
Okay, so make sure. So thank you so much for being and talking to me today. Hopefully I'll get better about this, and by that time maybe I'll have you again. But before you go, where can people find you?
You can find me on my Facebook page at facebook.com/Celia Rose Cosplay. I'm also on Twitter at PlanetsTwinkle. And I'm also on YouTube with Macross Fan Central and on iTunes with Reanimated and Repacked Podcast.
And if you're curious about me, which I don't think you would, because Celia's way like more than me, you can find me on Twitter at thejesterprince, all one word, lowercase. But thank you, Celia Rose, so much. You mean so much for me. I was so worried that no one was going to want to do this for me, and you came up and helped me and all this great stuff. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on.
Hello? Is that it?
Can you hear me?
No, I didn't hear that.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. See you guys next week, hopefully. Bye.